Hello.
Hello. Hi,
Hi.
honey. Hi.
Hey,
I wanted to capture the
going on?
excitement of us seeing each other for the first time.
No, in a year.
Yeah.
So you're prepping for the big shebang in a month.
Yeah, it's really coming in fast. Jonah's like off to the races with building all the components and assembling and gathering and all of that. So yeah. Yeah, and I'm so grateful that your ability to take time for us to gather. Maybe let's start before I get too zhuzhing on my fangirling about you. Um, can I share your birth chart for folks?
Oh yeah, go for it.
Yeah, okay. Um, and maybe as I'm doing that, do you want to like tell us your name? I always feel like I'm gonna say your name wrong, so I'm afraid to say it.
Yeah, it's so tricky. And it's the worst if you read it more than you hear it said. And then
Ah,
it like imprints as the red pronunciation. So it's Brynja. The
ah,
J is like a Y. And I've had many very close people in my life calling me Brynja for many months,
mm,
4 years into our relationship. So it doesn't faze me at all if anyone gets it wrong.
great. That's kind. Yeah, so this
Does
is
anyone
your
ever get your
chart.
name wrong? Am I saying your name right? I just
Name.
Nameh.
Hmm.
That's a beautiful
Yeah.
name.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. It's one of those and I think the reason why I so resonate with your frequency and what you pass in your publications, in your educational materials, and your who you are as a person is how I experience you as very shamanic. Um, and yeah, so that pinged to me as a detail because I wasn't born with the name Name. It came in a song, Ad Gure Name, which is a Sanskrit word, and it's one of those chant songs. And it was a Sikh musician, Satnam Kaur, which I don't trust that I'm saying her name correctly. But Deva Premal and Miten also sing this Sanskrit chant. And so when Satnam sang the song on a concert version, she said, "We sing Name, which means I bow. I bow to the gifts of the divine."
That's so beautiful.
And up until my Uranus opposition, I was very ho, 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 very much in my masculine and very much in my I call it my inner spike. Um, yeah, my birth name is Kim, and to me, that doesn't feel like who I am, and I've struggled with my birth name for a long, long time. So,
I've
yeah.
always wondered in having children or in
Mm.
experiencing your own name. I'm just learning evolutionary astrology now, which is an
Ah.
interesting complement to human design. It's like two sides of sister hemispheres,
Mm.
a little bit more like the plumbing, and one much more interpretive.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I was thinking, does you can look at someone's chart and see what they might identify
Mm.
with their sun sign and their rising sign name wise. And I feel
Mm.
like my name, I was really lucky. The name that I have really perfectly aligns with my sun sign and my rising sign.
Uh-huh.
Uh, and thinking also like if I ever had kids, would I could I try and name them by looking at their astrology chart and saying what would feel good for them?
Mm.
It's an interesting thought process.
Right. Well, and in so many traditions, I imagine you've got a context for this, but in so many traditions, right? Like there is that rite of passage time where, maybe taking on another name or, there's more of a ceremony. Not that there isn't a ceremony in, the lineage that I come from, but anyway, just welcoming the spirit, the spirit of the self
I did
to
actually get baptized into a new name like
ah,
a week after the Human Design Conference last year. It was a very busy month
oh
that
wow.
uh but I'm part of the moon dance tradition in uh Mexico. The moon
Uh-huh.
dancers and on your fourth year, you get baptized. So I don't use it though. I'm very content with my name for everyday use. Luckily,
Yeah.
it's a nice thing. But it is. I imagine it can be really hard to not have a name that fits your
Mm,
inner experience of yourself.
yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. So here we are gathering as we're about a month away from the Santa Fe Human Design, High Desert Human Design Conference. And this will be your second year as a presenter. And what I've been curious about, like, I fangirl about who you are as a person because of all of your publications. Um, just, as I was new to learning human design, I wanted something to kind of help me anchor into more of the components. Like your Incarnation Cross book was really supportive in that your deck, the human design deck, was really great because I was struggling with gates and I was struggling with channels. And then the animal totems, because what I love about the animal totems book is how it brings together gene keys, I Ching or I Ching, however you say it, human design, and then you felt the animals. Is that right?
Yeah,
As you were preparing for that book, or you had a process around that?
yeah, and that's just my interpretation. I know other people have associated other animals with the gene keys or with the
Mm,
gates or the hexagrams, and this was simply my associations because my deepest divinatory practice and my oldest divinatory practice is animal archetypes, animal symbolism,
mm,
and uh, and it just started to happen that it started to match up. I don't know, the archetypes and the symbolism of these animals that are used to kind of guide you in your life,
mm,
and the symbols of the I Ching, which also guide you in life. And they're like two different languages that both have meanings that coincide. And it started actually the first chapter, the first association that I ever made for this book was with the 28th hexagram or
ah,
gate or gene key. And I was reading in the gene keys about totality and walking alongside fear and befriending it in
mm,
our lifetime. And something clicked for me because the animal totem associated with fears, through the way that I learned it, there's many different interpretations, is the rabbit. And I had never understood that. How could there be a positive symbol for fear? And when I read it in the Gene Keys, I said, that explains what I'm missing in
mm,
understanding this animal symbol. And so then every time I would see the rabbit, I would link it back in my mind to the Gene Keys. And
mm,
then when I was learning the human design gates, I would I mean, it's very difficult to remember them initially.
mhm,
And if I had it associated with an animal, I
mm.
could immediately integrate it. It was going much quicker. And then this just kind of started naturally associating in my head with a system I already knew and
Mm,
matching it with the symbol that had a similar meaning.
mm,
But the challenge of that book was the I Ching, the Human Design Gate, and the Gene Key sometimes are very similar to each other, and sometimes they're kind of different.
mm.
And how can I match an animal symbol to all of those, even if they're a little bit different? What's the core thread there?
Yeah. Oh, I love hearing that backstory and that context for how that book formed or how your trajectory of
Like my
that context for how that book formed or how your trajectory of. Sorry, I think we were a little bit on delay there. Yeah. What were you saying, dear?
sorry. I still think I'm a little bit blocky.
It's coming and going, but we had some time there where it wasn't.
I've been having great service up until this point.
Mm,
What's what's going on? I hope for the best, I suppose.
yeah.
Um, anyway, sorry, were you able to get that story? Did it come through?
Yeah, what you were saying, yeah, I got
Okay.
that for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was offering my gratitude for you giving more of the context for how that came into, its nucleus and its growth and its evolution. Yeah. One thing that's super curious for me to ask you is how was it that human design and you found each other or met each other?
Yes. Kind of randomly. I I had been called to do a very serious apprenticeship in shamanism. So
Mm.
I had found a shaman and he had said, come live with me as full time as you can in over in France, and you will participate in everything we're doing here. And before you get here, before you move in and you quit your job and you leave your life back in America, you have to buy this textbook of human design and you have to know human design before you get here.
Oh,
So I had 6 months to learn it. So it was kind of like a prerequisite to go into a field that you maybe necessarily wouldn't think would include human design, but this particular shaman did use it
wow.
quite a lot in sessions, and he wanted that language to be accessible because he used it so much.
Mm.
So I learned it and I learned the gene keys. And then I ended up living in a house with three other people who were very familiar with human design and spoke about it constantly.
Mm.
And anyone who came in the house was getting kind of an unofficial reading from all of us. And we would all talk about it before they got here, while they were there, and after they left. We would talk about everyone's
Great.
interaction with each other. So I had this kind of seat of the pants, self-taught, uh, interactive education that wasn't all that official.
Mm.
And I will readily admit that my education in human design is a bit of a just a passerby, coming in, looking around, learning what I can, and then probably passing through into the next thing. I very much feel like
Mm.
my time in human design was temporary,
Mm.
and now it moves, it continues to move, and the things that I really needed from it, I took.
Mm.
And this is often how they speak about a lot of very complex wisdom systems around the world is once you've learned as much as you can,
Mm.
get it, and then just live as organically and naturally as possible. So now I don't think about human design that much, but I know I'm using it
Mm.
without thinking about it too much,
Yeah.
uh, just
That's,
for me to feel myself.
huh. I love learning that story about your trajectory there. And yeah, it almost feels like various versions of immersion
Yeah.
into human design and then how that was incorporated in this other trajectory or depth of study um, while being in
What
France.
something that became actually very clear at the last human design conference because I had been invited by you and I came in really hot and I did 4 classes in like 4 days.
Yeah.
And I had thought like, oh gosh, everyone here
Mm.
knows a lot more than I do
Mm.
because I didn't really learn as officially as everybody else did. And I'm going to embarrass myself or get chewed out for not having this very official
Mm.
understanding of human design. I've got maybe like a more the way I explain it to people who come to me for readings is we're not necessarily here to get into the nitty gritty. We're here to
Mm.
bring it into the felt sense and the feelings and the sensations in the body. It's very 1949. Like we're here to feel things, and if we can feel it and bypass the mind a little bit,
Mm.
that will give us more benefit. But because you had made these wonderful little note cards
Mm.
that we were all wearing around last year,
Uh-huh.
I I realized like, wow, I don't have any first line, but maybe not any, but
Mm.
almost none in my full chart. Studying is not really my thing.
Yeah.
Uh, and I have a ton of fifth lines. And I kind of realized that perhaps my time in human design is just uh, passing through,
Mm.
providing a piece of the puzzle that I can provide to others, and then getting out,
Mm.
provide a solution and then taking off.
Yeah.
And that felt really good to see it that way.
I love that. And I'm curious if you noticed, I mean, it sounds like your first, the birthing process of meeting and sitting with human design was very auric. You had the aura experience of somebody who was in their study or, had been experimenting for a while. And I'm curious if having the experience last year of being among 100+ people, not all at the same time, but all of these people who are very much able to speak this language, like, did you notice something in your experience of these people who are also studying in the same, or are you getting that feedback? Sorry, that was feeling weird to my ears.
No, you get it at all. You're
Oh,
good.
that's weird. Okay. Do you track what I'm asking?
How it was being around people, being in the community where everyone's talking about it. I mean, it's lovely because
Yeah.
it doesn't happen in your real life almost
Mm.
ever. At least since I stopped living in that house with a bunch of analysts. But I actually found it even nicer than living in the house with the analysts because that was kind of insular. There was
Mm.
one type of approach that was being used that I didn't actually necessarily love.
Mm.
I found it rather dogmatic, the way that I
Mm.
had learned it. And and I was so surprised that at the conference it was not as dogmatic. It was very open-minded to interpretations and ideas and different ways of using it. And of course, there are people that really want to stay exactly by the books. There are people that want to stray into other ways of interpreting.
Mm.
But there wasn't like a
Mm.
anger about either one. And that was really refreshing. I was actually very, very scared coming
Mm.
into the conference that
Mm.
there was going to be that kind of hostility of
Mm.
the content that I was bringing was too heretical, uh,
Mm.
and that didn't happen. In fact, it was the opposite. It was lovely.
Beautiful. Yeah. Well, before we get to what you're speaking about this year at the conference, I'm curious to return back to your publications. It'd be interesting for me. I could have looked this up. I don't have too many one lines in my first lines in my design either. I'm curious, like, what was the trajectory? Was it the animal totems, then Incarnation Cross, or how did that flow?
Yeah. Well, before I started my business, I actually did make the human design deck for me,
Ah, right.
and I made a couple of copies, and they were horrible. I mean, everything was misspelled. It came in a bag, and I wasn't expecting anyone to buy it. And then
Mm.
people did start buying it. I was horrified because
Mhm.
it was so badly made. Way before those, yeah, all
Oh.
different illustrations, all different texts. Um, Maybe not all different, but for the most part. And so I took it off the shelf. But then
Mm.
a year or two, 3 years later, I had this enormous impetus to create animal totems in the I Ching, which is
Uh-huh.
I had been wanting to make that for years. And uh, I had been receiving feedback in my apprenticeship of you're not allowed to write this book until
Oh.
you're finished with your apprenticeship or until you do it under my tutelage or until you do it my way. And I had said, I'm not going to do that because the vision I have for it is very clear. This is
Mm.
my vision. This is my understanding of it. I want it to be my thing. And so when I left that apprenticeship, it all just came out kind of in an explosion, very 14-2 style.
Mm.
And so that one that was kind of like my first baby. I do refer to my books, my card decks as my children. That was my
Yeah.
first child with animal totems and the I Ching. And then and I when I published it, right before I published it, quarantine happened.
Oh.
And I had already been spending the last couple of months in complete hermitage writing and illustrating animal totems and the I Ching. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, I never want to leave the house again. I'm a big introvert, so I was just in heaven. And And then quarantine happened, and I was like, oh boy, like I get to stay inside even longer now, but I have to
Yeah.
do something with myself.
Mm.
And my quarantine project was was combing through this like 1,000-page transcription of Ra talking about the Incarnation Crosses, because I
Oh.
would occasionally go reference it. And when I would reference it, it was such a jumble. And there was most of it was kind of him trashing people he didn't like with certain
Mm.
profiles and certain crosses. And it was hard to extract the thread of the knowledge he was imparting. So I had been going through over the years and highlighting it.
Mm.
And so I just thought, why don't I actually make this into cohesive notes for myself? This is
Mm.
always how these projects start. It's for me first.
Mm.
And usually if you're enjoying referencing your own notes, someone probably else will like it as well.
Uh-huh.
So I did a little illustration for all of the crosses and I made a little description for myself. And it was like, great, this makes sense now. Why don't I take this new piece of information and put it into uh, the old human design deck and republish it?
Oh.
And so that was my
Oh.
quarantine project, was republishing the human design deck much nicer.
Mm.
So that came out right after I did Animal Totems and the I Ching. Yep, those are the Incarnation Cross cards. And
Yeah.
they make up the bulk of the deck, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went and I spoke at a different human design conference right when that launched. And
Ah.
everybody really liked the Incarnation Cross part of the deck.
Uh-huh.
So much so that I was invited on Emma Dunwoody's Human Design podcast.
Right.
Luckily, I didn't know how big of a podcast that was when I went on because it was my first podcast. And,
Oh.
I was still kind of getting used to speaking. I'm still getting used to it. And that blew up. And then for a few months, I was having session after session after session of people asking, will you give me an Incarnation Cross reading?
Got it.
And all I had was like a little paragraph
Mm-hmm.
for each cross.
Yeah.
And that didn't like enough to give a reading.
Yeah.
So then I dove in and I started doing way more research on each cross so that I could speak to someone for an hour about how their cross interacts with the rest of their chart.
Mm.
And I developed this whole system of reading it. And I was giving people readings. And then very immediately I got really kind of burnt out from
Mm.
doing these readings. And I said, why don't I just take all these notes that I've made for all these readings? I made much more in-depth notes for each cross
Mm.
and turn that into a textbook so people can just buy the textbook and they won't request sessions from me. That would be great. This was purely self-motivated for my yeah, I'm much more easily exhausted from. I'm an open
Mm.
throat. I can't do
Yep.
too many events in a day.
Yeah.
But I think writing is a really excellent avenue for open throats, at least.
Yeah.
And two
Yeah.
fives.
Mm.
Ra says that the internet is the biggest blessing to two fives.
Ah.
So we can
Lovely.
alone at home and still impact the world.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then I published that book, and that ended up being my most popular product to this
Mm.
day. Well, kind of like a shock to myself.
And can I interject?
Yes.
What I love about your book, because that was one of the workshops that you did last year, when you orchestrated or organized the group of us to answer the dinner party section. Oh, I
Mhm.
mean, butter. That was gorgeous. I don't know if you want to speak to that, but another element that I love about how you offer the book is that people can buy, I don't know if this is still the case, but they can buy a digital of their cross as opposed to the whole book. And I found that really helpful because as a 3/5, I
Yeah.
wanted to try you on before I bought the whole thing.
Yeah, and that seemed to go really well, and I've thought about doing that for my other products as well.
Hmm.
But I think it's worked really well for that,
Yeah.
and you can still get that. And then if you get the PDF to try it out, you can deduct the PDF cost from the list
Ah,
after you
got
buy
it.
it.
Got it.
You just have to read the fine print at the end of the PDF.
I didn't do that, but I'm thrilled that you had more of my money. Yeah. I refer to in your deck the your explanation of the channels. I just find how you synthesize the channels so helpful on my analyst journey. So yeah.
And this is great to hear right now because at this very moment, I'm
Mm.
getting ready to reprint the Human Design deck
Oh,
and I'm combing through it to see if I want to edit anything.
uh-huh.
It's always a bit horrifying to reread your old writing and see how much you
Mm.
messed up. I mean, when I first printed the Human Design deck, there were errors because I edit
Ah,
most of my own work.
right.
Unfortunately, I'm sorry, I'm giving myself away for being so unprofessional, but I'm just like an artist trying to publish my notes. I'm not really an
Right.
academic. And I so there were all these errors, and so many people sent me messages, and they were so mad because I had
Mm.
so many errors, and I was trying to fix it. So I'm trying to always comb through it now every time I reprint.
Mm.
And the printing, the printing of the cards is why it's so expensive
Mm.
because I have them printed on uh, recycled paper,
Ah.
but that does make it a little more pricey. So before you spend a whole lot of money, definitely want to get those cycles out, which I don't always do.
Yeah. Well, and the other piece that I love about all of your books, you referenced it, is, being your artist self coming through in your publications and like how the Incarnation Cross, you create a representation of the physicality with the energy centers that are touched with the Incarnation Cross. Like, and then like I'm looking at, wavelength, that channel, and how you've got, the image includes the energy centers impacted, but then also, this musician, talking about, the channel. So again, this could be a whole fangirl hour. So yeah, I'm
Thanks
such a
for
fan
having me.
of what you put out in the world. Yeah. Did you want to speak to anything that I said, or did you want to shift to talking about the dinner party element of the Incarnation Cross? Because for me, that's like, I love that part.
Oh, that was really cool because I tried to sprinkle in a bunch of fun tidbits into the Incarnation Cross textbook,
Hmm.
guidebook. And as I'm writing it, I was thinking, oh, how fun it would be to be in a room full of people and only interact with them through the thematic of your cross,
Mm.
why this person has come into your life. And during the workshop at the Human Design Conference, I did get the moment to kind of be the puppeteer
Yeah.
and pair people together. I think I even went so far as to the first round, I had the generators go pick who they responded to.
Right.
That's how we paired people up. And then the second round, the projectors went and felt who they wanted to interact with. Um, and the manifestors just did whatever they wanted.
Yeah.
And the funniest part about the end of this part of the workshop, because it seemed people were into it, and I was so happy that was working. And I was sitting with a woman who was talking about her cross, and I want to say she was cross of the Clarion, which is
Mm.
like big boys. I think she was a manifestor as well. And
Mm.
at the end of our time doing that, I got up and I was like, "Hey, everybody, we're done." Nobody heard me at all. I was like, "You guys, please." And I just look at her and I said, "Can you use your manifestor voice and get everyone to circle up again?" And she was like, "Everybody." And everyone immediately stopped. And it
Yep.
was it's so nice when you can be held and supported by your
Mm.
throats. Uh,
Yeah.
and that was a wonderful workshop.
Yeah. Well, and the question, so what I'm trying to point at is, with each Incarnation Cross, you're naming a question that in, say, a dinner party experience, symbolizes or anchors the essence of what that cross is.
Yeah, the idea is that when we meet people, the
Mm.
usual go-to question is, "What
Right.
do you do?" And we ask that because what we're really kind of asking is, why is it important for me to be talking to you? What is
Mm.
it that's important about what you're doing in your life? You know, if you are an artist, oh, that's great. I'm looking for an artist. If you're a scientist, that's great. I'm looking for a scientist. But often this sometimes misses the point of why we're actually interacting with someone. And if
Mm,
you think your incarnation cross as something that someone else needs from you, and that
right.
everyone that comes in your life needs a dose of your cross. So what if instead of saying, what do you do? Everyone just asked a question that pertains to what is your cross helping me with right now? So for instance, I'm a cross of the Sphinx. Everyone that comes into my aura is usually going through uh, a change in direction of their life. And
Mm,
there's a couple of crosses that have to do with changing or pivoting direction in different ways. And so sometimes I would rather when I meet people, I would want to say, so what's changing in your life right now? And usually it's either changing jobs or a breakup. I meet
mm,
people exclusively in this context.
yeah.
Uh, and vice versa. So if I meet a whole bunch of sleeping Phoenix people, uh, in a way, like they could come and ask me, what are you trying to get busy? Or what are you trying to resurrect in your
Mm,
life right
mm,
now? And it might be that there is something, and I can, just by being around them, it kind of evokes and it teases out the energy
yeah.
that I need in that department of my life.
Brilliant. Yeah. That was such a mind-blowing thing because what the other piece that's interesting about that workshop was um I hadn't noticed that section of the Incarnation Cross book. So it was like here it was, I'm referring to this book and this material, and yet I hadn't looked at that spot. So it was like I bumped in it in a third line way. I bumped into the new experience of this material that I was reaching to in so many ways. So it was really cool.
So many ways. So and it was really fun, really cool that I knew what everyone's process was when I signed up for the class. You and Jonah were so on the ball that I had everybody's information in a spreadsheet before I
Yeah.
got to class. So
Yeah.
I had come to class with like an attendance sheet. And I was like, okay, cross of rulership. Yes, here's your question. Hold on to this.
Yep.
Okay, cross of the clarion, here's your question. And I
Yep.
felt like I was my most teacher. I felt like the closest ever to that experience. It was really fun.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was a full room,
Yeah.
so yeah. Anyway, I'm talking about something that's not going to happen this year. So, and it wasn't recorded, so we can't refer back to it other than engage people who are present and can share about their experience. And I'm wondering if we want to shift to talking about your latest book, because that's, I believe, the theme or the subject matter of the talk you'll be doing this year in September, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And it's kind of a follow-up to one of the talks that I
Oh.
did last year. As yeah, Yin Mysticism. And I
Hmm.
had thought about maybe I should make a dedicated Dine zine or something just for human design and yin. Um, I think that might be helpful to do at some point because I reference back to it a lot, and that seems to be the golden rule. It's if I reference it, somebody else might want to reference it. But
My
if I get the time,
intuition, my intuition was pinging to ask you, like, do you want to make that a digital thing people can purchase? Kind of like how you did the Incarnation Cross. And I was like, no, May, you're not the manifestor. Don't do that. So I'm excited to hear that it's in your awareness as a potential.
to
Yeah.
hear that your awareness of the potential. Yeah, maybe that might be a good idea if I can manage to swing it before the
Mm,
month. I'm a little behind on the ball.
mm,
Uh, yeah, so last year I spoke about yin and human design,
mm,
specifically how mystical the yin is in human design and systemically in every area of life and consciousness in our culture, society. Things that are yin are usually either underappreciated, we don't put value on them,
mm,
or we fear them. We don't want them.
mm.
And that also goes for the yin parts of our human design chart.
Right.
How often have you heard someone say, oh, there's a lot of white in my chart. That doesn't look good. Like
Mm,
even immediately, they don't know anything about the chart and they see the empty, they see the parts that are yin and receptive and they don't like it.
mm,
And my whole goal of this book was talking about how the parts of any cycle, anything that is yin and feminine, contain equal, if not more, mystical and spiritual importance to gaining mastery over yourself, over the world, over your interactions with the world.
mm,
And that the more you cultivate the yin, the more control and mysticism and sageliness that you have uh, in the rest of your life.
mm,
And it was hard not to, when I was writing this book, not to start applying that to human design. Because I was
mhm,
thinking about yin in every area of life, and I have all this human design history, and it was giving me this totally new perspective
mm,
of chart and also feeling terrible that I feel like there's a misunderstanding
mm,
of the areas of our chart that are yin or the energy types that are yin and that they're being undervalued or treated as less and self undervaluing.
mm,
So projectors, reflectors, and anywhere that you have openness in the chart. And the whole goal of that last talk was to go through each area of the chart that is yin and like blast it with value, to like
mhm,
open up and teach, because that's what you have to do with yin. You have to really illuminate and put attention that this is very important. This is
mm.
extremely valuable. This must be protected if you want to have a good experience with you and everyone around you. This must be the thing that we are cultivating and protecting
Yeah.
and not forgetting about and treating with utmost respect and reverence.
Mm,
And that was the goal. And interestingly, the first time I talked to a very high level human design analyst about this,
mhm,
they hated the idea. They they ripped me to shreds about
mm,
it.
mm.
And I wrote it anyways.
Good.
Yeah, it was. I'm not. I'll admit this book was a bit insane to write, and it might not have been in its, you know, finalist form when it came
Mm,
out. Uh,
mm.
but it was. It bent over backwards trying to get these thoughts out, and it came out how it came out. Uh, but yeah, and it was really well received at the conference.
Mm,
Really well received,
yeah.
and I've gotten since then continuing contact with people who had seen it and said that, especially reflectors, feeling much more appreciated, much more comfortable with their openness.
Yeah.
Uh, and so I was thinking, because of the positive response there and also the confusing nature of the topic, it
Mm,
might be nice to try and do a follow-up of similar information,
yeah.
maybe just casting it in a different light.
Yeah.
That's the plan so far, but I could also talk about anything else that I know. I told Jonah last year I feel like I brought everything that I know
Uh-huh.
and I gave it. I know I'm feeling like perhaps there's nothing left for me to explain. However, the Yin mysticism topic is so hard. It's hard for me to wrap my head around.
Mm.
And if it's hard for me to wrap my head around, I might as well continue to try and refine it so it makes more sense to me and everybody else.
Yeah, and um just a data point, like there's maybe, I mean, because I'm doing the charts again this year, so I'm seeing the repeaters versus the new. And so there's probably, I don't know, want to say either half new people or like a third plus of new people. Um, yeah, and I experience, human design teachings or concepts, I need it multiple times. That might be my quad left nature, but it helps me to hear it again. And I'll say there's so many elements to that talk last year that really landed and then I did that post workshop with you,
Yeah.
where we went into the material and maybe spent more time with the material in ways. But the two places that I really had gratitude and fondness for was how you spoke about being an emotional authority person, so a yang solar plexus, with a parent who is a yin solar plexus, so undefined solar. And so that concept, and then also the concept of how where we're yang, we're the masculine, we're the container, the holders for the yins in our life. And my doing mind was like, oh, that's what I do. Okay, good. Like I loved that to sit with and support in my trajectory.
I think it makes you hold the places that you have that power with more responsibility, and it feels good. It
Yeah.
feels really meaningful to have a little bit of discipline in areas where we have weight to throw around. And I think that's really important for anything that's young, and from every man that I've talked to who has done any kind of training to like cultivate and discipline their masculinity, that's how they speak about it. It's you're bringing purpose and meaning, and it feels really good to hone it and protect and custodian. It's beautiful, and I love that we all have so much synthesis of masculine and feminine in our physical body, in our energetic body, in our personalities, in our brain, and also in our human design. And there are places where we can say, look, there's actually a lot of masculine energy here. Let me make it strong. Like, let me push it. That's how you grow your masculine energy. You push it to overcome obstacles. And the way that you grow your feminine energy is totally opposite. You don't push it. You praise it, you support it. And that was kind of the goal of the talk that I gave last year, was to praise, like deeply praise all these feminine areas. So I think that's the idea I'm going in for this talk that I want to do this year, is maybe focus a little bit less on the praise of the feminine side. I mean, it's always important. I think it's more important to praise the feminine than to, discipline the masculine. But maybe that's what I might do, is I might talk a little bit more about really good conduct in having a defined center in protecting those around us. Something like that.
Lovely. I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm excited for how it evolves in you and what comes out. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because I wonder if you feel a response. Could you speak to what you said about your responsibility as a defined emotional center with an undefined? Like maybe not using because I'll just transparency, like my mom, I'm defined emotionally and my mom's an undefined solar. And that was a place where, it didn't work. And so to hear you speak about your experience, and I'm not trying to cross a line if you don't want to go there, but it was really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll probably speak about that exact same story because it really drives it home. It's a great example, and I probably will repeat myself a bit from the last talk.
Yeah.
But the essence of it is that, and I always say this in a session, thank God, as someone with a defined solar plexus, thank God for the people with the open solar plexus around me, because the function of an open center, yin yin, is grounding, bringing context, bringing comfort, and guiding. And so there's this reciprocal relationship. It's like a male-female relationship. It's a yin-yang relationship. They feed each other. But so often what you see is this unhealthy, toxic dynamic of beating them each other up. So you have some people who are defined emotionally, and yes, there's tripping, but there isn't this discipline to not terrorize the people around you with the the gravity. It's like you don't realize the gravity that you're holding.
Mm.
And so the power of the defined solar plexus is the most powerful center in the body graph. This should take a lot of care of how am I holding this? Because the two things that you're receiving is this. The open center, the open solar plexus is stepping into the trip, the psychedelic trip of
Right.
the defined solar plexus, and helping them get a little bit of context in the chaos. They're
Right.
coming in from outside the chaos saying, I've seen your tumbling trajectory. Here, hold on to this.
Mm.
Here's some perspective. It's very, very clarifying. It's very grounding to have someone come in calmly to your trip and show you some things and explain things to you. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And then vice versa. So with the defined solar plexus, you need this. You need to have open solar plexus people come in and help you.
Yeah.
But if you are wielding this energy out of control, that you're coming in and you're kind of abusing and too coming on too strong, you're going to push away the help that can come to you.
Yeah.
So responsibility of an open defined solar plexus is to create this, use your power to create safety in your relationships. Use it to create a lagoon. You know, if you have oceanic power, create a little safe haven in there so that they can come in safely to your ocean harbor and deliver some context and information and understanding. And so if we want that, we have to understand how to hold it well, and to be gentle, as gentle as we can with people who are carrying the sensitivity of the open emotional center. And then vice versa, the open emotional center person gets something as well, hopefully. One thing that they get is that feeling of safety with someone who has a defined emotional center. It doesn't have to be that being around emotional center people is horrible and exhausting.
Right.
Maybe, I mean, maybe I'll take a poll of my loved ones and ask. Maybe I'm talking out of my ass, but you want to make them feel safe. And that feeling of safety and protection is wonderful. And then also the defined solar plexus, you can go very deep. You go very, very deep into the emotions. And sometimes, from what I've heard from open emotionals, is that sometimes they want to go really deep, and you can go with them down, take them down into that depth, and help them access it, and then come back up with them. And so they can access a depth that they might want to go into if it feels safe. It's such a beautiful relationship between the two, and each one of the centers has this, and I'm still fleshing it out. And it really just comes down to, in day-to-day life, is like, is there a healthy male-female relationship of my energetics with everybody else's energetics on this minute, subtle level through each of the centers, especially with generators and projectors. I think they're so often linked up. And how do we, are we choosing partnerships that feel like they are helping yin and yang? Are they reciprocal? Are they not toxic? It's a very fun thought to play with.
Yeah. Thank you for speaking to that. It feels it feels really rich with different places of contemplation to hold and be witness to. Yeah. I don't remember.
I think there
go
is
ahead.
somewhere, there's
Go ahead.
somewhere else in human design where there's more officially a yin and yang perspective that's baked into human design, and I haven't read about it. And this, I'll just give the caveat, the disclaimer that this is just my thoughts. It's my thoughts. This isn't like official human design. I gave this disclaimer at the beginning of the last one as well. Like, please don't consider this as like the law. This is just an idea. It does not have to be. This is heretical. This is me having some thoughts. And please, no one get too mad at me about it, because I am just I'm having a little philosophy session here, and this was me.
Yeah. One question that I don't know if this is left field or not, so we can drop it if it doesn't resonate as a curiosity to explore, but have you tracked or considered definition, like single definition versus split, triple, and quad in the realm of yin and yang?
Ooh, I haven't. What would you think about that?
Well, I guess I initially the easy checkbox is that single definition is yang. Like the easy checkbox is that single definition is yang. And then the splits are variations of yin. But maybe they're a blending of both yin and yang, depending. A blending of both yin and yang, depending.
Yeah, maybe you're right, because when you have split definitions, you're looking for coupling with others to complete a circuitry. And coupling is a yin trait. Yin wants to come together and also separate.
Mm-hmm.
It's duality. It's two people together separate.
Right.
So in my perspective, separating and joining and marrying are both yin qualities. And just being in oneness, in complete unity oneness, is more of a yang trait. But yeah, I think that's probably right about that.
Because even like as we're continuing on this theme, I'm thinking of like 6 and 3, better to be free, 9 and 0, nowhere to go. Like I feel like they're, I don't know, book 2, but it could be a whole other place of consideration that is just landing for me to ask here. I don't know.
Yeah, probably. The other areas of human design that I've thought about with yin is pretty much just variable, like just right and left. Right is so clearly yin, left is so clearly yang.
Right.
But I haven't gone very deep there. And then also the idea of the global cycles, we're coming to the kind of pinnacle of the 55th gate in 2027. And that's saying we're getting to the most yang place in the cycle. That is what the 55th I Ching talks about. It's not going to get more yang than that for a long time. And it's kind of like saying human design, in my opinion, is saying we're reaching our yang pinnacle. Pinnacle is where the genetic leap is happening. And then we'll start to decline towards the yin. But don't be too worried about that, because the I Ching says don't worry about the decline too much in the 55th gate.
Yeah.
It says, yeah, everything's really sunny now. Don't worry about dusk coming. Just be happy about where it is now. But in regards to 2027, I have no idea. I will take no big guesses about that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an anomaly I haven't brought myself too close to. And as somebody who has the 55th gate, I'm like, well, what happens? I don't know.
Yeah, and I have the 1949, and I'm
right.
like, I hope I don't go mad in 2027.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's a big open curiosity. Yeah. Well, so lovely to be able to muse and fangirl and be curious with you, and thank you for taking the time. I wonder if you want to, one like little itchy question that I was curious to ping you with is to speak about the name of your business. Because you're not going by your name necessarily, but you've chosen a business name.
Yeah, I did. In order to launch the books, I needed to have a little business, and Ceremoniance had been floating around in my head for a long time. And I only had like a week to choose a business name. And I thought, this is not enough time for my solar plexus to choose a business name. I need more than a week. And I just thought, I've already been thinking about this name for a long time. This is like a pre-baked solar plexus name. it's been baked for a year or two. I've thought about its name, and ceremony, the Latin word for to be in a sacred ritual, and
Mm.
then uh, ants, eants is the suffix for to be in.
Mm.
And even though my company has primarily been about these guidebooks in human design and archetypal stuff, it's not particularly ceremony oriented
Mm.
necessarily. I'm not facilitating
Mm.
ceremony just yet. I might in the future.
Mm.
But I like that because it sometimes feels that archetypes and symbol reading and gathering information, very Gemini, that is shamanic in a way. And it might
Yeah.
prelude ceremony. To work with archetypes is also ceremonial in your whole life.
Yeah.
Life is filled with archetypes.
Yeah.
That makes it ceremonial in itself. And it also felt like a reminder to myself that down the line, this work that I'm doing might become more ceremonial.
Mm.
It might transform. And I'm figuring that out right now. At the moment, I'm a 14 too. I mean, and a Sphinx. I half the time I have no idea what direction
Mm.
I'm taking. It's just a big chaotic, freaky mess
Mm.
of new passions and new directions all the time. But the moment I'm entering into the visionary art space,
Mhm.
which is kind of shamanic art, psychedelic art in this world. And as always, as usual, my generator hasn't given me the memo of exactly what is at the end of that path. I say, girl, it's just kind of like putting the breadcrumbs down.
Mm.
And I'm following the breadcrumbs and the art's coming out. I had thought to myself, I wonder if there's something I can do with the art at the Human Design
Mm.
conference, but
Mm.
that idea didn't bake in time. So maybe for
Yeah.
this time that won't be there. But
Yeah.
it's something's happening.
Well,
Something's
I
happening.
love, go ahead.
I have been considering at some point teaching a class where you paint your archetypes of your astrology.
Mm.
So I'm almost like having this like lovely breather from human design in astrology. I don't know how many other people have gone through this experience of being
Yeah.
just in human design for many years and then getting into astrology for the first time and being like, whoa, this is nice.
Yeah.
This is so different.
Yeah.
And I love interpretation, so I'm having a blast.
Mm.
But the archetypes, these blueprints of our experience and
Mm.
our soul's plot line and painting them out, but
Mm.
also having the opportunity to learn your archetypes and then work through the therapy of getting to know them through painting them. So
Mm.
that could be a very interesting idea one day.
Yeah. And as you started talking about that, my like yee excitement face was like, I'd love to paint my design,
Face was
because
like,
I'm split. So I think of it as like I have two islands of life force and they kind of, well, not kind of, they function differently. So what does that look like, or how could that be represented in an image?
what does
So
that look
that
like,
feels
or
exciting.
what could that be represented in an image? So that feels exciting. Yes.
All the
Maybe next
thoughts.
time.
Yeah,
Maybe.
all the thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and to your naming this space of um your paintings, I've been loving what you're sharing on Instagram. Like to be able to experience or get snapshots of where your painting world is going and what's happening there has been such a lovely experience to be witness to. Thank you so much for bringing us in, those who follow you.
Thank you for saying that. It's been a little terrifying to
Ah,
hear that. Uh,
mm,
it's it's baby steps.
Hmm.
And nobody signed on for wanting to start seeing all of my posts and my art. I just hard launched it this year on
Yeah.
my 31st birthday.
Ah,
Said, okay, here you guys go. My North Node is in the fifth house, so this is where we are now.
got it. Got it. Got it.
Uh,
Yeah.
so thank you for saying that because it's been a bit of a swan dive into
Mm,
a new venture that is ever mysterious,
yeah.
but yet very, very powerfully fueled by my sacral. So some things must be going on there.
Lovely. Well, and what you're speaking to here about, that baby quality, I don't know if you remember that I was processing with you at one point in the conference last year. I was saying something about like how, things didn't go how I thought they were going to go, and I wanted, things to launch in maybe a more faster way. And I really loved how you named that about your business being in stages of infancy, toddler, etc. I don't know if you want to re-say that here because that felt really nourishing.
I think it was something along the lines of I was about to go on stage with the yin talk, so I was like yin, 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 like my whole brain was like yin, trying to verbalize it all. So you
Yeah.
caught me like I think I swept and I was like, it's yin. And then, so I think the idea was that a lot of people want to launch gigantic.
Mm,
I'm kind of feeling that right now as well. So it's very nice that you're reminding me of this.
mm,
They want to launch with $1 million investment, and immediately it's going to make tons of money. It has to go really fast right from the get-go.
mm,
And that's very unstable. And it's
mm,
very masculine to think, we can just skip childhood. We can just skip right to midlife. And that's not healthy at all. And the likelihood that it's going to be very unstable
mm,
if you launch that fast is so high. Like the likelihood that you're going to crash and burn because you're not assessing like, does this part of it work? This part didn't work, but it's okay because I started small, so nobody really noticed, and I can readjust.
right.
And and also that the small, the yin, is where everything germinates that will become big later.
Mm,
Sometimes you can think of the smallest, stillest, most inconspicuous moments are it's the moment where everything is planned that will come out later.
mhm,
Smallness, something's probably happening that you can't see yet, but will end up being the main fuel to the fire later. And the real trick of it is that you probably won't see it when it's small. You won't know
mm,
what baby is being planted in. It's the same thing as like when you have a baby. When you conceive,
uh-huh,
there's no sign for a long time. Even
right.
if you know that you're pregnant, you're not really gonna, you don't see any baby. It's microscopic.
Mm,
And it used to be that we would think that it's perfectly fine to drink and smoke and damage the baby, damage your body because the baby's so small. So it
mm,
doesn't matter. And
mm,
now we know that the smaller the seed, the baby is, the more detrimental or the more powerful the nutrients you put in your body are. It's kind of the same thing is that if you're birthing something, you have to like give it the most amount of attention before you can even sense that it's starting to grow. Uh, so it's the utmost carefulness to the utmost smallest beginnings of things. Hard to do. And you
yeah.
can even continue that further to say that before you even begin, when you're in a bardo, when you're in the something has ended, but you haven't even started the next project, while you're just thinking about it, that's actually even more important
Mm,
to have very careful, loving intention, because that's
mm,
where you dream up the whole thing that's going to happen.
mm.
But I can really get on my soapbox about this, but
No, all of this is landing as a person who was farming for 10 years. when the seedlings were in the hoop house, it was such a delicate space. You know, a disease could come in and take them down so fast. And that was where I felt my most tigerish. But once they were out in the field, I was like, they got this.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of dots connecting as you're speaking to this.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I've been doing a lot of I Ching readings in the last few days as well. So I'm having a lot of interesting coincidences of I had an I Ching reading this morning about the 55th gate, all about yang, and then yesterday about the 64th hexagram,
Mm,
Bardo. It's
mm,
about all about Bardo.
mm.
It's like it's very serendipitous. I keep talking about the same hexagrams in all these different situations. So synchronicity, that's good. We're doing the right thing.
Right?
And the right
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm thrilled that you said yes to joining again in 2024 and can't wait to see you.